My name is Eliza Vance. I'm 31 years old, and I work as a project manager for a tech startup in Portland, Oregon. Sitting here now, in the quiet calm of my own apartment, it feels surreal to recount the day my entire life pivoted. The story I'm about to share is the story of how my own family, the people who were supposed to be my safe harbor, handed me a verdict that felt like a death sentence, only for it to become my declaration of independence. For more than a decade, I had carried this low-grade, constant hum of anxiety in my veins, a persistent feeling that I was merely a utility, a function to be performed, rather than a person to be loved. The moment my mother delivered that ultimatum with such cold, surgical precision, the floor fell away from beneath me. But in that free fall, I found a voice I didn't know I possessed, a clarity that cut through years of fog, and a strength that had been forged in the silent fires of resentment. This is the story of the phone call that didn't break me, but instead shattered the cage I had been living in. I remember the light in my apartment was that soft golden hue of a late Seattle afternoon, the kind that makes everything look peaceful and warm. It was a stark contrast to the ice forming in my veins as I listened to my mother's voice through the phone. She was talking about my younger sister, Amelia, and the financial strain of her upcoming wedding. "Eliza, darling," she said, her tone laced with the manipulative sweetness I had learned to dread over 30 years. "With all of this stress and the sheer pressure of the expenses, your father and I have decided it would be best for everyone, especially for you, if you just took a step back. We need a period of no contact until after the wedding is over." The words didn't just hang in the air, they seeped into me, cold and heavy. They were officially disinviting me from my own sister's wedding, from a milestone I was expected to help fund, but not to celebrate. And they were framing this profound rejection as an act of benevolent concern for my well-being. The audacity was so breathtaking, it momentarily silenced the panic. For a long, suspended moment, I was that little girl again, desperate for a crumb of approval, conditioned to accept any scrap of attention, even if it was negative. The old Eliza, the one who had been meticulously trained for obedience, wanted to apologize, to ask what I had done wrong, to promise I would be better, quieter, less demanding of their emotional energy. But then, something monumental shifted deep within me. It wasn't a violent rupture, but a quiet, definitive click, like the final turn of a key in a long-locked door. A wave of surreal calm washed over the rising tide of my panic, and my grip on the phone steadied. I took a slow, deliberate breath, filling my lungs with the air of my own freedom, and I said, my voice so much steadier than I felt inside, "Okay." The silence on her end was palpable. "If that is your final decision, I will respect it. But before I hang up this phone and grant you the silence you're asking for, you are going to listen. You need to understand, for once, exactly why this isn't a punishment for me. You need to hear the truth you've been so carefully avoiding for the last 12 years. I could hear her sharp intake of breath, the beginning of an interruption, but I pressed on, my voice flat and controlled, as if I were presenting a quarterly report to a room of dispassionate executives. For 12 years, Mother, since the month I graduated from college and got my first real paycheck, I have been this family's sole financial backer. I have not been a daughter. I have been a line of credit. I paid off the second mortgage on the house after Dad's failed real estate venture. I covered Amelia's entire undergraduate tuition at a private university because a state school wasn't good enough for her potential. I have funded every one of her emergencies, from crashed cars to last-minute trips to Mexico with friends. I have sent a fixed amount of money every single month, on top of the thousands upon thousands for unexpected costs that always, coincidentally, arrived right after a bonus landed in my account. I listed each item not with anger, but with the detached finality of a judge reading a verdict. Each item another brick in the wall of evidence I was building between my old life and my new one. Do you have any idea what my life has looked like while I've been subsidizing yours? I continued, the calm in my voice now feeling like a superpower. For my 25th birthday, I sat on the floor of my first apartment and ate instant ramen because I had just wired you the money for a new refrigerator, and my bank account was in the double digits. I have zero savings, Mother. The 401k, I started with such hope. I had to take a hardship withdrawal from it last year to cover the down payment on Amelia's luxury. The first real test of my newfound resolve came about 2 months into my new reality. An email popped up from my aunt, my mother's sister. The subject line was your mother. My stomach plummeted. Eliza, it read, your mother is absolutely devastated. She can't stop crying. She's a wreck. This is breaking the family apart. Can't you just be the bigger person here and call her? You know how she is. The old me, the people-pleasing automaton, would have crumbled instantly under the weight of that manufactured grief. But the new me, the one who was slowly learning to prioritize her own survival, felt a hot, clean, and righteous anger surge through her. This was not concern. This was a tactical maneuver, a guilt-based probe sent to test the fortifications of my boundaries. I stared at the screen, my fingers cold, knowing that my response in this moment would set the precedent for everything that followed. I crafted my reply with the careful precision of a diplomat navigating a minefield. Thank you for your concern, Aunt Carol, I wrote. The matter between my parents and me is a private one. I will not be discussing it. I hope you and the family are well. I did not explain. I did not justify my actions. I did not defend my position. I simply stated my boundary and politely, firmly, disengaged. Hitting the send button felt like an act of profound self-preservation, a silent declaration that my peace was not up for negotiation. A small, fierce spark of pride ignited in my chest, its warmth slowly melting the icy fingers of guilt that had tried to grasp me. It was a small victory, but in a war for my own soul, it felt monumental. With the energy I had once poured into managing my family's crises and finances, I began to actively and intentionally build a life that felt authentic to me. I started spending my weekends hiking in the Cascade Mountains, the physical exertion, and the breathtaking, sweeping views from the peaks, a powerful, visceral reminder that there was a vast, beautiful world that existed entirely outside of their drama and demands. I signed up for a pottery class at a local community center, something I had always secretly wanted to do, but had dismissed as a frivolous expense. The feeling of cool, wet clay spinning between my hands, of creating something tangible and beautiful from a formless lump, was incredibly healing. It was a metaphor I could feel in my bones. I, too, was being reshaped, remade into something new and strong. I was slowly, painstakingly rebuilding myself, piece by fractured piece, into a whole person. Nearly 6 months into my new life, I received a formal, crisp letter in the mail from a law firm. My hands trembled only slightly as I opened it. My parents, it stated, were formally disputing their access to a family investment fund that they claimed I was illegally withholding. For a moment, a cold spike of primal fear shot through me, the fear of authority, the fear of being in trouble. But it was quickly followed by a wave of grim, cold satisfaction. I was meticulous. I had kept every single record, every bank transfer confirmation, every cashed check image, every email thread where they itemized their requests. I scanned the entire documented history of my financial servitude and forwarded it to a lawyer I had preemptively consulted, a calm, efficient woman who reviewed the documents and called their bluff, legally frivolous and transparently manipulative. Their attempt to intimidate me with legal letterhead only served to solidify my resolve. It was the final, undeniable proof that they never saw me as a daughter. They saw me as an asset that was refusing to perform its function, and they were attempting to repossess it. The process of facing them, even through the sterile, formal buffer of legal representatives, was the final necessary step in my emotional emancipation. It stripped away any last lingering vestiges of sentimental attachment or hope for reconciliation. This was never about love or family or connection. It was, and always had been, about money and control. Letting go of the fantasy, the dream of the loving, supportive, proud parents I had always ached for, was a profound and necessary grief. I allowed myself to mourn them, to cry for the little girl who had never been truly seen, and for the relationship that had never truly existed. In doing so, I made sacred space in my heart to appreciate, respect, and truly love the strong, resilient, and capable woman I was forcibly becoming. I was not just moving on, I was metamorphosing. The relief and clarity I feel now, a full year later, is a constant quiet hum in the background of my life, a new baseline of existence that I once thought was impossible. The constant, low-grade anxiety that had been my soundtrack for over a decade is simply gone, replaced by a pervasive sense of peace. I no longer dread the sound of my phone ringing.